everyone. Welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network, and you can also catch the audio of our show on Sun Radio 96.3 FM in Sun City Center and on your favorite streaming platform. We're so excited you joined us today. We have another great show for you. I want to give a shout out to my sponsor for my on-air wardrobe, the Spring of Tampa Bay. The Spring of Tampa Bay provides sanctuary and services to victims and survivors of domestic violence here in the Tampa Bay area, and they are a wonderful organization. If you're not familiar with them, please acquaint yourself with them. The Spring Boutique, where I get my clothes from, is at the corner of Swan and Henderson, here in Tampa. So you can find the clothes that I wear on the show, and I would like you to go to the Connecting with Kim Facebook page and Instagram account for a very specific posting of what came from them and what came from me and where you can find it. So go to those pages, take a look, and frequent the Spring of Tampa Bay Boutique, because all the proceeds from the thrift store and the boutique go to support their mission of providing sanctuary and services for victims of and survivors of domestic violence. So I'm so excited. I have a first-timer in the chair today on Connecting with Kim. He's an old friend, so we've been together before, and actually we had a radio program together. And my guest today on the show is Mr. Frank Reid, who is the Director of Recruitment for the Emergency Squad of Sun City Center. Welcome to Connecting with Kim, Frank.
Oh, thanks, Kim. I'm glad to be on the program.
I'm so happy that you're here.
Yeah.
Okay, so even though I know you, our audience, our watching and listening audience doesn't know you, and so I always like to give my guests at the start of the show however many minutes they want to take to talk about their life journey thus far and what brings us to the topic we're going to discuss today.
Okay. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. After high school, I left Pittsburgh and joined the Marine Corps and spent 4 years there. They taught me electronics as part of my job for the Corps. When I got out 4 years later, I answered a blind ad in the newspaper, because back then in 1982, that's kind of how you got jobs. So I answered that blind ad, went in for the interview. They said, yeah, we'd like to put you on. We're going to have you repair something called a CAT scanner. I said, what's a CAT scanner? And they said, don't worry, we'll teach you what a CAT scanner is. And so I spent my entire career in diagnostic imaging, CAT scanners, MRIs, X-ray machines, and in various roles in various positions. So I started off in service, then service management, implementations, product marketing and management, and then ultimately sales. And I retired at the age of 58 from that particular position, was looking for something to do. Found Sun Radio in Sun City Center. As you know, we started a program. It was Jammin' with Frank and Kim.
Yep.
I ultimately left the station, and you created Connecting with Kim. I needed something else to do, and I found the Emergency Squad. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, is the Emergency Squad.
Well, I really applaud you, Frank, because, I mean, when you dived into the Emergency Squad, you and your wife, Sally, you really dived in, and you went through a lot of training. I think you just take a few minutes and let everybody know what training you've received since you joined the Emergency Squad.
Yeah, and the nice part of this is that the squad gives you this training, or provides it, if you're going to be on the ambulance crew or you're going to be on our van service. So we start off with the Emergency Medical Responder class. So that's the first thing that you take. That's about 3 weeks, half days. They teach you CPR, they teach you basic first aid, and all the rest of that. I then became a driver, and so I went to driver training, so I learned how to drive an ambulance. And then, after I was with them for a year, they will reimburse or pay for you to go to EMT school. And EMT school is an entire semester at Hillsborough Community College, where you learn much more in depth how to take care of and treat a patient. And so they paid for all of that. There is a little bit of give back. I've got to do 90 service days for them to pay that back, but they provided all the training. So I haven't spent a dime on any of the training.
I think that is, well, so if you, we'll talk about the history of the Emergency Squad a little bit before we talk about the recruitment, but as a consumer, my family and myself have been a recipient of the services of the Emergency Squad, which is an entirely all-volunteer organization in Sun City Center. And so we're going to start off talking about what are the services the Emergency Squad provides, because I can tell you, when I saw Robin Watt walking through my garage that day after I fell coming down the attic steps and fell on that concrete floor and was in the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in my life, when I saw Robin Watt walking through the doorway of my garage, I was like, I mean, I instantly felt, oh my gosh, help is here. I'm going to be okay. So let's talk about the history, a little bit of the history of the emergency squad and what they do.
Okay. So we got our start in 1964. There were 34 people in the community of Sun City Center. They called themselves first aiders, was what they called themselves. 1964 was before the idea of EMS was even created by law. That didn't come along until 1966. So we were sort of ahead of our time.
Yeah, groundbreakers.
We were. And so that service they felt needed to be provided to the community. And so we provide 4,500 ambulance calls every year. So that's 4,500 ambulance calls that Hillsborough Fire and Rescue don't have to go on, because we're taking those calls. We have a van service, a wheelchair van service, where we take people to appointments, things like that. We've got about 1,400 runs of those. We have 400 volunteers that sort of arm that building and provide those emergency services, and we do it 24 hours a day. It's all volunteer. We, in fact, are the last all-volunteer EMS organization in the state of Florida. Everybody else has some number of paid employees. No one gets paid, and we never send anyone a bill.
No, I want people to understand this. The services provided by the Emergency Squad of Sun City Center are absolutely free. And if you've had an ambulance ride, whether or not your insurance covered or not, you will know that ambulance rides are expensive.
Yeah, they're very expensive. And a lot of times, we've had instances where the patient said, whatever you do, don't call the county. But their clinical situation was such that we had to, because they knew that if they got on the ambulance with us, we weren't going to charge them anything, and they were going to have to deal with insurance if they went any other way. So we get that quite a bit.
And you, I know that the emergency squad also, when a 911 call goes in, when you dial 911 and you need some help, that call can be routed to the emergency squad in our area. In other words, it might go to the local firehouse, it might not, it to the emergency squad.
Yeah, somebody dials 911 and Hillsborough sort of triages the situation with their dispatchers. If they decide, well, this is actually basic life support, which is what the emergency squad provides. If it's basic life support, we'll go ahead and dispatch an engine or a truck or a squad car that'll have paramedics on it, and then we'll ask Sun City Center to come with us and provide the ambulance part of the service. So we sort of work hand in hand, and it's a really tight relationship, hand in hand with the folks at Hillsborough Fire and Rescue.
Yes, and we are very blessed because we have a Hillsborough County Fire and Rescue very close to Sun City Center. It's on 674 between Sun City Center and Waimama, the boundaries of Waimama. Right. So we're very blessed.
Imagine what would happen if the emergency squad went away. I just said we took 4,500 ambulance calls. Right? I don't know how that area would begin to survive this if the emergency squad wasn't there to do what they do. So in addition to the van service and the ambulance service, there's a lot of other ancillary things we do. For example, we loan out ambulatory equipment. So if you need a walker or a wheelchair, we provide those free of charge. We have a lot of community engagement that we do, CPR classes, Stop the Bleed classes. We actually hold seminars on fall prevention and avoidance. And in Sun City Center, that's about half of our calls are people that have fallen down, tripped and stumbled, and they don't have a way to get back up, and so they call us.
Right. And I think that the fact that it's all volunteer, the fact that they don't charge for their services, I know that my family and I have been the borrowers of some of the equipment from the emergency squad. I know that recently when I brought my mother home from a hospital stay at Christmas time, I was having trouble arranging safe transport from my mother from the hospital back to getting her into her home. And I called the emergency squad and I said, look, if they get her in the car, which I know they can safely do, and I can get her to the house, can you help me get her in? And they were like, we're there for you. And they were. They got her out of the car, safely in her home, safely in her bed, and she was not in any way in any discomfort at all.
And that's our tagline, neighbors helping neighbors.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all about.
So, like a lot of organizations today, because you're in a relatively new position, the director of recruitment, yes. They didn't have that position before.
They didn't.
They were recruiting, but they didn't have someone devoted to it. We are experiencing in Sun City Center a dearth of volunteers. People do not want to volunteer anymore. And our whole community, as you well know, Frank, is based on our clubs and whatnot, is based on volunteerism. So Now they put you in place as the director of recruitment, so step us through those issues.
Okay, so the issue seems to be that there is a reluctance on the people, let's say, around my age, people in their mid-60s, early 60s, to volunteer. They just don't seem to be interested in doing it. And it's not just the emergency squad. Every organization that I talk to in Sun City Center is having an issue getting people to stop or postpone or their retirement, right? Like, you don't have any problem with the pickleball courts, right? I mean, everybody plays pickleball. But trying to get people to dedicate some time to the emergency squad is being a challenge. Our challenge further is our average age is 72 on the squad, which is kind of significant. You're running an emergency service and your average age is 72. What's happening is people are aging off of the squad faster than I'm able to get new volunteers to come in. And so that's our issue. And we began to realize that we live in a community that is very generous financially. They support the emergency squad with funding, and we're all very, very grateful that they do. It's not a cheap thing to try to run an ambulance service.
No, not at all.
And so
you have state-of-the-art ambulances. I've looked at them.
We do. We have state-of-the-art ambulances. So the fact that people will write checks and they contribute, that's a wonderful part of the community. Our issue is getting those people to volunteer, to come in and spend some time with us.
So what is the biggest issue that they give you, why they don't want to volunteer? Okay. I mean, what is the biggest stumbling block?
Okay, well, the biggest stumbling block is people are under the impression that they have to have a medical background in order to join the squad. Well, I didn't have a medical background when I joined the squad. I mean, I sold CAT scanners and MRIs, and that's true. And I could explain to you chapter and verse why it is you should buy mine and not my competitors. But I had no idea what patient care was about. I had never actually dealt with a patient that was on the floor and in need of some help. I never did any of those kinds of things. So all of the training that I received, I got from the squad itself. My wife, Sally, is another example. She was in risk management for her career. You can't get any further away from patient care than that. But they trained her, and she now is an EMT as well. So you don't have to be medically trained in any way. We'll take care of all of the training. So that's the number one reason that people give to not join the squad. Number two is the misperception that if they're a snowbird, they can't join the squad. Because we do, we're a 24-hour service.
Right, 24/7.
As all volunteer organizations, different from your paying job, we have an unlimited number of vacation and sick days. So if you need time off, you take the time off.
Right.
The third one people bring up, and I think it's mostly that they don't understand it, and it has to do with the fact that we run an 8-day rotation. We have 8 teams. Each team takes a day in rotation. Well, people say, well, I can't do the 8 days because, and it was actually Bill Hodges, a friend of ours. I was at a social event, and he said, well, Frank, I can't do this because I can't do the every 8 days. Because every Thursday, I've got to be at Bob Evans for Bob's Vets there in Sun City Center.
That's right.
I said, well, Bill, if we're on every 8 days, Thursday only comes up once every 2 months. He said, okay. And I said, and you just you just mark off that I can't work Thursday morning, and you could work the afternoon or the evening. It would be perfectly fine. And they began to realize. So there's sort of a misperception of how that 8 days works, and that's really so that people, if they join and they end up on a team, they don't have to work every Friday and they don't have to work every Monday. We all share the days of the week.
Right.
And that's the reason for the 8-day rotation.
Okay, so on the 8-day rotation, help me understand, what are the hours of the 8-day? Are they the same hours in the 8-day rotation, or are you also changing shifts?
Well, so we run a shift from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. We go on 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And then 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Okay.
And that's the ambulance shifts. The van service is from 9 to 5. And the dispatch office, they work 5-hour shifts. And those vary a little bit in time. Not that they vary from day to day, but they're different from the 8-hour shift that the ambulance is on.
Okay, but my question is, like, if you're on the 8-day rotation, are you working the same shift every 8 days? So are you working, like tonight you told me that you're going to be working at 11 o'clock. You're going to be on the overnight shift. So you're going to be 11 to 7. So when your rotation comes up again, are you going to be on 11 to 7?
No.
Okay.
So that also rotates. The captains put together a schedule, and the idea is that we're all volunteers. So we're trying to share the sort of labor load that goes into running a 24/7 ambulance service. So everybody takes a rotation. Now there are some members of our squad that love to work the overnight, and they'll say, I always want to be on the overnight. And we love those people because then I don't have to do the overnight. But everybody takes a turn doing each of those. I mean, some people, they don't like the 7 to 3 because they don't like to be out of bed that early in the morning to come in at 7 o'clock and work the 7 to 3. So we all sort of share the load.
If you're just joining me now and connecting with Kim, my guest today in the chair is Mr. Frank Reid, who is the Director of Recruitment for the Emergency Squad of Sun City Center, which is a timeless, valuable, irreplaceable organization in Sun City Center. And I can tell you that because I've been the consumer of their services, my family has, and they provide an incredible value to our community. So we're talking about misunderstanding of how the shift works, how the rotation works and the shift works is another reason why people apparently don't want to volunteer.
Well, and that's the reasons that they tell us that they don't want to volunteer. Is those three, right? That I don't have a medical background, I'm a snowbird, or the shifts. Those, I would say, are the top 3 reasons that people give us that they don't want to or can't volunteer. They've got something like in Bill Hodges' case. I can't volunteer because every Thursday.
Right, I have this thing.
I have this thing. I'm going to play pinochle, or I'm going to
But
do
it
whatever
only
it is I do.
happens every 2 months.
Every 2 months. If you actually do the arithmetic, it's only once every 2 months.
Math
Yeah.
is a wonderful thing, isn't
It is. It is. It's terrific.
One thing that I've always wondered about, and I don't know if they shared this with you, but do you think that there's some fear of liability or being held accountable or fear of if I make a mistake, something terrible will happen to this person? Do you think that also enters in the mind of the people and they don't want to volunteer?
Well, I think maybe not so much the liability part, because we're well insured. We're actually work under the direction of a medical director, so a doctor actually sponsors our EMS work. And so I never really get the whole thing about the liability. What I do occasionally hear is I'm not sure I could handle the stress of it. And what I can tell you is, and I've always handled stress fairly well, but there's something very energizing about going out on an ambulance, and that's really kind of how I got hooked. I started into the training. We went out on an ambulance run as part of that training, and from the moment I did that, I was absolutely hooked on doing that. The thing that also people I don't think realize is it's a lot of fun actually being on the emergency squad. You have a tendency to think of these things as being so serious and all the rest of that. You're taking care of people, and that's true. And it's part of the taking care of people that I think is the appeal. So a lot of times when we come on site and we walk into somebody's house and we're working on, we're assessing, getting ready to go to the hospital, they'll say things like, you know, you all are just such angels, right? They're always so appreciative of the fact that we're there. One of my patients actually found me on Nextdoor, because obviously being director of recruiting, I'm out there on Nextdoor. She found me and she sent me a note thanking me and my crew for what we had done for her, bringing me up to speed on her case and what happened to her and all the rest of that stuff. So clearly we had made an impression on this person's life. Another story that I like to tell, and this one is maybe a little more on the humorous side, and it's not my story. It is somebody else's story. I'm merely a character in this story. So the story goes like this. Our CFO, Marty Gifford, lives at Aston Gardens. And in Sun City Center, Aston Gardens is a place where there's a bunch of apartments and a centralized building where they go and eat. This is Aston Gardens North. They eat, there's club rooms in there and all the rest of that. And so Marty was on her way in to have dinner. A woman walks up to her and says, "You're with the emergency squad, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And of course, Marty's starting to think, "Oh, I hope this isn't a complaint." So anyway, so the woman says, "Do you know an EMT by the name of Frank Reid?" And she says, yes, I do. She goes, "Well, I just want to tell you, he was out here last week to take care of my friend. He provided such good care, and he was so nice to her. Tell me, do you know if he's married?" But I mean, it's the impact that you have on people's lives. So for me, that's one of the big reasons to join the squad and to enjoy it, because you're going to get that feedback. You know, you write a check to an organization, you have no idea what happened to the money when it left.
Right.
You arrive at somebody's house who's not having a particularly good day because they had to call you.
Right.
You know that you're helping that person right then and there. Your efforts are going for something like that. The second thing, and I realize that what I'm about to say has kind of become cliche in certain organizations, that it's a family, right? And so it's kind of cliche. But I think for us it's a little bit different. It really more is. We socialize together with the people that are on the squad. We all like each other. My best friends are on the squad. And I think part of that is that when you start going on an ambulance and you start taking care of people and you start having those sort of shared experiences with people, it draws you closer and closer and closer together.
Well, and you have to depend on each other.
We do. We have to depend
I mean, you
on
go
each
out and when you go out on an ambulance run, it's a team of 3 people, right?
It's a team of 3 people. So when we go out, it's an EMR, which is an emergency medical responder, and that's where most people start when they go on the squad. The second person is an EMR driver, so you still have to be an EMR. You got to have that basic understanding, the driver, and then there's the EMT who is responsible for the patient care and responsible for the team. So we always go out with 3.
And and you fulfill all 3 roles because you started as an EMR, then you became a driver, and now you're a full-fledged EMT.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things about our scheduling is when we have the snowbirds go north, some of us will actually fill in extra shifts. So sometimes I'm the EMT and sometimes I'm the driver. Those seem to be the 2 that we're most scarce on as far as people.
Well, and an ambulance, I mean, I've seen the size of the ambulance. I mean, I would think you would definitely need training to understand how to wield that vehicle around.
You do.
I mean, it's quite sizable, and it's, it's a box on wheels. So, I mean, and you just backing up and maneuvering. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're also certified to train people to drive an ambulance. So at the end of that training, you get basically a certification to be able to drive that ambulance.
So now that you're the director of recruitment, what are your plans for try to energize or revamp, or whatever word you want to use, the programs to recruit volunteers?
Well,
what are you planning?
For me, recruiting is in many respects a sales type position, right? You're trying to sell an idea or something to the public. And for me, ads in the newspaper or articles in the newspaper, they're fine. Social media is also fine. But the one-to-one discussion, right, where I talk to you directly, I think is the thing that makes the biggest impression. Most of the current recruits that we get actually come to us from other people who are on the squad. So they'll notice a new neighbor moving in and they'll go and approach them and say, please come and join the emergency squad. We're a great organization, and they'll explain it. Bring to our information meetings that we have the last Thursday of the month at our training center, get them to come there and volunteer. Now, and I also want you to understand that we don't just have to get volunteers from Sun City Center.
Right.
Some of our volunteers actually come from as far away as Plant City, Sarasota. We've got people that drive up from there. Some folks from Ruskin come over and actually volunteer in the squad because we're the last and only all-volunteer EMS service in the state. So if you've got the qualifications and you want to volunteer, we're kind of the only game in town. So you don't have to live in Sun City Center. Now, granted, we're only going to handle calls in Sun City Center, unless Hillsborough calls us and says, we've got an accident on this road.
Yeah.
Could you meet us and maybe transport a patient or two?
Yeah, yeah.
We call that mutual aid. The EMS units back each other up.
Right.
So, but to receive the service, you've got to be in Sun City Center. But to participate or be a volunteer, you don't have to be. You could be. I worked with an EMR just the other night. She lives in Apollo Beach.
So repeat that again about the informational meetings, just in case somebody out there wants to attend one. So they're you said the last Thursday of every month.
They're the last Thursday of every month at 10 a.m. at our training center. And our training center is at 124 South Pebble Beach in Sun City Center. You can't miss it because the building was the original firehouse in Sun City Center. So it kind of looks like a firehouse on the outside. We turned it into classrooms and things like that on the inside.
And I want to tell you folks, everybody in town loves the emergency squad. Everybody. So if you are in another club and you have some sort of event and you have leftover food, it goes immediately. There isn't any question. It gets packaged up and immediately goes to the emergency squad. And because they have people there 24/7, they have a facility, they have places in the back of the facility that you can rest. If if it's a quiet night, you want to grab a few weeks before the call comes in, you can. And you have tremendous cooks who cook you. I've eaten the emergency squad food. It's amazing.
Yeah, we do. And that's one of the roles that people like to fill. And sometimes what happens is people will come in and say, well, I don't know about that ambulance thing, but I can cook. And so I'll cook for a team. We'll bring them on as a cook, and then you'll start to see them go, well, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could be in the dispatch office. I'll do dispatch. So then they'll spend some time in dispatch, and they're watching the ambulances go out the door. I could probably do that. And next thing you know, they're on the ambulance with us. So you could start off in one role and then work your way into other roles at the squad.
And everybody loves the emergency squad. So we only have a few minutes left, so if there's any specific message you want to deliver to our viewing and listening audience out there, just look straight into your camera and let it rip.
All right, so what I would say is I don't think you could find a more rewarding thing to do with your time than to be a member of our emergency squad. If you're interested, please attend our information meetings where you can ask questions and find out more about what we do. Those are the last Thursday of the month at our training center. That's 124 South Pebble Beach in Sun City Center. If you just want to chat and find out more, you can always give me a call. Our phone number is 813-633-1411. Ask for Frank Reid or Chris McCann.
Or Chris McCann. Okay, I've known Chrissy for ages. We started in women's chorus together.
Oh, okay.
And when she joined the emergency squad, it like your story, it was all over for her. She was smitten. I mean, from the first get-go, and she's become an important member of that organization.
Yes, she's our assistant chief of HR. So she's the one that actually processes everybody in and keeps all the records for us.
Yeah, she's an amazing person. Everybody at the emergency squad that I've come in contact with, for whatever reason, has always been absolutely super. Their first inclination, their first care and concern is to help you. So, and you couldn't be part of a better organization.
Oh, well, thank you.
So get out there and join the emergency squad of Sun City Center. And you people listening on Sun Radio, you have no excuse now. You know exactly how it works. So thank you, Frank, for being my guest today on Connecting with Kim.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciated it. And my guest today, if you just happen to tune in now, is Mr. Frank Reid, who is the Director of Recruitment for the Emergency Squad of Sun City Center, the last all-volunteer EMS service in the entire state of Florida, maybe the U.S. Who knows? But they are a great organization, and they need your help. And you will find it to be a very rewarding experience if you join the squad. And there are many, many positions. You don't have to be an EMT. They have many roles that need fulfilling at the squad. So check it out. That's all we have time for. I want to thank my sponsor for my on-air wardrobe, the Spring of Tampa Bay, who provides sanctuary and services to victims and survivors of domestic violence. We'll be back next week with another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network and Sun Radio. Thanks for joining us. So long.